In this video, I want to test 6 mods that I've seen top Cities Skylines players are using. So in this showcase, I want to go with each mod one by one, show what it does, pros and cons of each, and so from really complex mods like Procedural Objects to management focused mods like Traffic Manager, I will take a look at each one and try to find out what can be done with them. So, if you want to learn quickly how to level up your next Cities Skylines 1 gameplay, keep watching. Intersection Marking Tool. As Steam description says, this mod allows you to quickly create road markings at intersections. This is for detailing and aesthetic only and will not tell your traffic where to go. And most importantly, there is little to no performance impact. Upon entering mod settings, we see several options. I personally left them all by default, but once you become pro, I bet you can play with them. Tons of shortcuts, which might be helpful again for advanced players, and the backup and support tabs. So basically, it all comes down to 3 things you can do with this mod: lines, fillers, and crosswalks. So lines. It's the most basic tool. As you can see now, I just simply click and connect the dots that automatically appear. All the lines appear on the panel. Simply hover on it to choose the line you want to edit. By default, lines are dashed, but either using shortcuts or settings, which I'm about to show you, you can change how they look. Also their color. Simply hover on it to choose the line you want to edit. And if you don't want your line to be continuous and you want to create sort of gaps in it, you can use start and end point option. I find it a bit not intuitive and tricky, especially when you need to add rules if you want to add a few changes to one line, but it's not in the scope of this video to dig into that. I just wanted to show you, you are free to change that and it creates way more options. Every time the lines are crossing each other, they create points that we can fill in. And once again, you do have many options to modify the look of filler. They also connect the outside points. You can use the option to create, for example, biking lanes. I'm not sure whether there's a picker option to match the color, but it's cool nevertheless. And the last option, which mostly applies to custom network assets, is the ability to add crossing. And again, they can be modified in many fun ways. So if you feel tired from watching this already, let me tell you that you can actually save your projects. This really motivates me to use it more if I know I can just simply copy all my work. So to conclude, this mod has 3 simple tools which can generate multiple unique products. It's mostly intuitive, and so the biggest con is it's hellish time consuming. And now it's time for network multitool. It sounds mysterious, but when we look at Steam description, we read, this mod provides many different tools for working with networks, and many more. Again, nothing crazy in the settings, I keep mine at default. We also have a bunch of shortcuts, and who the hell memorize all of that, and support tab. So let's test this mod and its options one by one. So unlock and add nodes. It's usually helpful with elevated roads. We can delete nodes or add new nodes, for example, when we have lamps peeking from the lower road. So adding or removing nodes around it can kind of move it. So adding nodes is helpful if we have very long bridges or elevation and there is not enough pillars to realistically hold it, so we technically add new ones. Union and split nodes is something that I don't personally see much sense in using. I tested it and as you can see, they connect or destroy roads in such unpredictable way that I don't see much sense in it. This is not my expertise, so sorry. Intersect segments is helpful because you can join the left out roads with chosen node, as you can see here, for example, intersection. It's a simple way to fix any mistakes usually caused by network anarchy, which makes the roads sometimes not. The opposite tool, which is invert segment, I did not have much use of until I learned, I think from the YouTube video, that it helps with retaining walls. I play around with few retaining walls, and yes, they kinda change direction, you can see on the pattern of walls and fences, but again, not much success. But slowly we are getting to the more useful option, slope option. It allows you to connect segments and slope them nicely. It doesn't work that great on very weird artificial angles like in this first example, but when I experimented with curved roads with more organic shape coming out of the highway, for example, the effect was very good, and I can definitely see it useful on the bigger highway interchanges. Arrange at line. It's a very simple tool to use when you create uneven roads, drawing them by hand. Here you have two examples, very disorganized road, very messy, and almost straight road that I even tried to fix with Move It, and it looks fine-ish to the eye, but you can see how better it looks with just, one click. Creating circles. It allows you to make better roundabouts. You simply select all the nodes from your, let's call it roundabout, and click to confirm. Then you can move around this roundabout for perfect position, and I also think there is a shortcut to change the radius of it and align nodes perfectly. You have seen my other mod related videos, and if you haven't, check the description for the whole playlist. You will know that there is also roundabout mod which does similar things, so check it out if you want to know more. Create loops, and oh my god, this is life-changing when it comes to building highway exits. Like, I don't even have much to tell you, you can just see that. Sometimes it goes crazy when we click very random stuff and it does not really make sense. And stops are neatly angled, it doesn't recognize the props built, that's the only downside, but we can delete them manually, so it's not a problem. Create connection node. It's basically a way to connect two roads. I noticed that on the straight road in different proximities and angles, it's hard to predict what it will do. It's supposed to do this S-shaped road, but sometimes it does weird loops, as you can see. I like to use it on hills together with slope tool because it does good in that conditions. Curved roads work similar to previous one, except that it won't generate crazy loops, only curves. How well angles look really depend on how you place your roads. If they are at crazy angles, you get somewhat crazy curves, but other than that, when using, with common sense, it looks fine. And the last one, create parallel road, which will be really helpful for highways if you want to create a parallel road. You have the whole tab explaining what keys to use to do everything. Depending on which road you choose, you will draw that road, so it's not copying the road, you can choose the one yourself. And by default, it's at the same height, so be careful about your network anarchy settings though. In the opposite to the previous one, this is going to be a quick one. So we're talking about the node controller renewal version. And so this mod by the Steam description allows you change node type and shape, like, no, she's Sherlock. And I'm just gonna cover a few functions. There is tons of videos on YouTube on how to actually use it to have crazy realistic results, especially when it comes to highways. So you just click on an intersection and you have usually 4 buttons and a panel next to it. You can drag each of these buttons like by hand to expand the node, to narrow it, to angle it, depending on your needs. And it's helpful when you do highway entries. They sometimes appear a bit messy, so you can fix it up. And also, when you have slopes and uneven terrain, the intersection or any nodes can appear very, extreme. So with this slope button, it narrows it very smoothly and evens everything out. So you can see it overlaps with some of the network multi-tool options already. In the panel, you have colors corresponding to each button, and you can manually enter the number values to set offset if it's that what you prefer. Rotation also, so when you enter the value in All tab, another little tool is to add crossings which are actually functional. There is also an option to install another mod, sort of plug, which allows you to hide these crossings. So for example, if we cover the crossings in the instance tool, they were functional, if you make this crossings here, you can kind of override it with the crossings that you find aesthetically pleasing. And last example is this really messy junction, which we know sometimes happens. Again, you can play around a bit and make this weird kind of glitches, graphic glitches, disappear if you rotate it in the right way. So pros, really simple, really simple, and provides fixes to common issues on the scale of one intersection. And cons, sometimes when I messed up, it was hard for me to go back no matter how many Ctrl+Z I clicked. And time for functional mod, which is Traffic Manager. That gets regularly updated, by the way, and it adds enormous options to regulate your road traffic and organize it. First, I recommend you to check out the mod settings when you are in-game and play around with them, spend some time checking every option, because there are some good ones, like realistic parking AI, spawning options, lanes options, and even some public transport options especially are worth looking. I use unified UI for all my mods, so here is a traffic manager button in my example. Toggle traffic light is you just simply click and then it generates the traffic lights. You can also add timed traffic lights, but what it does, it actually adds different steps for each of the lights. There's also manual traffic lights options, which I also don't use, so I also don't use it. I think it's something similar to timed traffic lights, but you can correct me. And lane controller, it's very nice, especially on the roundabouts, so we can actually use it, guide people where they are allowed to drive. So for example, here they can only turn to the right, and from here they can go here, and for example here, this is a very messy intersection, very messy roundabout, just to show you some of the options. If you don't want to play manually with lines, you can also use lane arrows options. As you can see, it says that they can turn right and turn straight, so you can click that, use Control, click, and it automatically changes the arrows so they make more sense. Another tool is the toggle vehicle despawing, and here you have beautiful explanation of the goal of despawing and what it exactly means. Also recommend you to check the mod settings for even more options. Then you have priority signs. You can either set that they can go straight, they can wait, or they can stop completely. Yeah, very simple. You can also click Shift and then it sets this road as a priority road, and with one click it sets everything nicely. So another one is junction restrictions. So we have the ability to control whether the citizens can pass the street, block U-turns, and there's also a nice options to ban them from changing the lanes when they enter the junction. It's especially helpful. And then you can already see the numbers over here, so you can set the speed limit. You can even change the limits for each lane. You can set the default speed limit for the road. Vehicle restriction is mostly about the types of cars that can drive on the lane or on the road in general. So you can sometimes, I don't know, ban tourists from going around, or trucks, for example, if you have a residential road. So when we get back to our messy intersection, you can see that this road by default can be parked on. So when you click parking restriction, you can manually toggle whether they can park. In the options, I think you can set that they can't park on the roundabouts. And there is last but not least the option to clear all the traffic. So if you really mess up and you want to have a clear view and, you know, play around a little bit, you can click clear traffic. And do we really need to talk about pros and cons here? Well, you can do everything with this traffic wise, but can never fix your spaghetti junctions. So time for a little breather, which is a line tool. And by the way, there's also the prop line tool and few others, but we focus especially on that one. So whenever you choose a prop in-game, this mode adds a few options to have more control and kinda draw with your props, including trees and fences, just as you would with roads, for example, but also it has few more options. Apart from simple drawing, you have placement options such as spacing, rotation, and depending on which prop you use, some options make more sense than others, as in this tree versus bench comparison. And you also get a circle options, which is amazing for decorating roundabouts and make all your props even. And when it comes to fences, not the in-game one that you can actually draw with, but rather the singular props that you can place, there is a fence mode that stops you from playing with spacing distances, since it does so automatically. And the only downside that I did not yet figure out is that they come a little bit uneven, which I couldn't really fix even with Move It. So again, I'm far from pro, but let me know if you found a solution for that. So pros and cons, I think I said it all. Cool tool, but it needs a little bit of playing around, especially with spacing. So last but definitely not least is Procedural Objects, and it has so freaking many options that this video would take forever to show them all, and since it's so long already, I just left you a little clip of only a few of the basic tools that I use. So what it actually does, because the name really doesn't say much, so this allows you to change almost any object in-game. So instead of entering asset creator and stuff, you can edit it in kinda live mode. There's a lot you can do: resize, reshape, rotate, add extra floors, change height. Some of these options you can see on the screen right now. And if you want to have a look at really crazy stuff people do with this mod, I think your #1 creator would be Acruas with his Asteris series, where he PO'd almost every item in this gameplay, and I'm still practicing with it. It can definitely be heavy with your PC, and the biggest cons is that the buildings you play with totally lose their functionality. So you have to either hide functional buildings inside with Move It, or it will be only aesthetic. But I definitely like that the simple tools, the one that I show you, are just a click away, and they are not overly complicated and are easy to access for the noobs like us. And that's all, you guys. Hope this was useful. Definitely could elaborate way longer of each of these mods. Let me know what would you add to the list, if I skip anything essential. And I did not cover any graphic mods since I have separate video on that, so check out the playlist and see you on the next one.